The sun was rising as the steamer Mongolia left the port of Suez. Its engines turned steadily as it entered the narrow waters of the Red Sea. For many of the passengers, this was their first view of the desert coast of Arabia. Endless stretches of golden sand and rocky hills shimmered beneath the sun. The air shimmered with heat, and the cries of seabirds followed the ship as it pressed southward. The Mongolia pressed southward toward the Indian Ocean. For Phileas Fogg, the departure was no different from the turning of a page in a timetable. He checked his watch, compared it with the ship's clock, and then calmly opened his guidebook. He noted the distance to Bombay. His entire fortune depended on such calculations. And yet his face showed no trace of worry. Passepartout, however, was in awe. The world grows larger every day. He leaned over the rail, gazing at the growing immensity of the world. And yet, he thought, my master behaves as if it were only another street in London. To him, the journey was routine over. To his servant, it was the world itself unfolding. The days at sea soon developed their rhythm. The passengers dined at fixed hours, strolled on deck during the cooler mornings and evenings,
and played games of cards to pass the time.
Continued his habit of playing whist, winning or losing with equal calmness.
as though the game itself mattered more than the money. Passepartout, meanwhile, enjoyed exploring the ship. He spoke with sailors, asked questions about the engines, and admired the skill with which the crew managed such a vast machine. At night, he often stood on deck, gazing at the stars, wondering how far from Paris he had already traveled. Among the passengers, however, Detective Fix kept his watch. He observed every movement of Fogg, never relaxing his suspicion. Each day he hoped for a message from Suez or Aden that would confirm the arrest warrant, but none came. The telegraph lines were still too slow, and his frustration grew. Through the Red Sea, the Mongolia sailed down the long body of the Red Sea, passing barren coastlines and the occasional Arab dhow with its triangular sail. The heat became oppressive, and the air thick with salt and dust. Many passengers hid below decks. But Fogg continued his measured walks at the exact same hours, no matter the weather. Passepartout, sweating heavily, fanned himself with his hat. "Does my master not feel this heat?" he muttered. But when he asked, Fogg replied only, "The temperature is of no consequence, provided the timetable is maintained." In truth, Fogg's willpower was a mystery to everyone. He treated heat, cold, and distance all as minor inconveniences compared to the precision of his plan. After several days, the steamer reached the port of Aden, at the southern tip of Arabia. The ship stopped to take on coal.
Passepartout was allowed to disembark for an hour.
For him, every sight was exotic, every sound a discovery. Fix, too, went ashore, though his eyes searched not for wonders but for telegraph offices. Still no reply from London. He clenched his fists. "The warrant must arrive in Bombay," he told himself. "It must!" Meanwhile, Fogg remained on the ship. He spent the hour writing in his notebook,
calmly recording the time of arrival and departure, and calculating how many hours remained until Bombay.
For him, the stop at Aden was simply another entry in his careful schedule.
Mongolia now left the narrow seas and entered the wide Indian Ocean. The air grew fresher, the waves larger, and the horizon endless. For the first time since leaving London, Passepartout felt the true immensity of the world.
At night, the ship cut through waters sparkling with phosphorescence.
Dolphins raced beside the bow. Passepartout clapped his hands in delight, calling other passengers to watch.
Even Fix, though troubled, could not help admiring the sight.
The voyage across the Indian Ocean lasted 13 days. The weather remained fair, and the engines of the Mongolia worked without failure.
Each sunrise brought them closer to India.
Fogg's calm never broke. He played cards, walked the deck, and read his guidebook.
Finally, the morning came when the coast of India appeared on the horizon.
At first it was only a thin blue line, then the shapes of hills, and finally the towers and domes of Bombay. The crowded harbor was alive with ships from every nation, from British steamers to Indian dhows and Chinese junks. On the docks he saw elephants, oxen, and endless lines of workers carrying goods.
This is truly another world.
Fogg, however, stepped ashore with his usual calm.
He checked his watch, confirmed the departure of the train to Calcutta, and walked straight toward the ticket office.
Fix followed closely, his heart beating faster.
But when he checked at the telegraph office, again there was nothing.
The warrant must arrive in Bombay.
It must! The delay was unbearable, yet he could not abandon his chase.
Passepartout, meanwhile, begged his master for a few minutes to see the city.
Only a little time, monsieur, he pleaded.
Fogg, calculating the hours, agreed to give him 1 hour before the train departed.
Passepartout ran into the streets like a child at a fair. He saw people of every dress and color. The smells of spices, incense, and dust filled the air.
He watched musicians playing strange instruments, while dancers spun and clapped.
He bought a few small trinkets as souvenirs, thinking of the stories he would tell in Paris.
But he also noticed the differences in custom.
When he entered a Hindu temple out of curiosity, the priests shouted angrily and drove him out, for his shoes had polluted the holy ground.
Red-faced and confused, he fled the temple, chased by the priests' shouts.
He realized that traveling the world meant not only seeing new wonders,
but also respecting unfamiliar traditions.
At the appointed time, Fogg and Passepartout boarded the train bound for Calcutta.
The carriages were crowded, the heat stifling.
But the train represented the modern power of the British Empire in India.
For Fogg, it was another link in the great chain of his plan.
For Passepartout, it was the beginning of an adventure he could scarcely imagine.
As the train pulled out of Bombay, Fix stood on the platform, torn between anger and determination.
The warrant will arrive in Calcutta, if not here.
he swore.
And so, boarding the same train, he continued his pursuit. The great subcontinent of India lay before them, with its vast rivers, dense forests, and crowded cities.
For Fogg, it was only the next stage on the timetable.
For Passepartout, it was the heart of an extraordinary journey. For Fix, it was the chance to prove his suspicion.
The adventure pressed on.